Yeah. Yeah. And thank you guys for making the effort to come today. I know it's kind of weird situation for sure. Um, I think first off, I just want to say thanks to Alltech. We work with Alltech on a daily basis. We're not paid by Alltech. We don't work for Alltech, but we work with Alltech all the time. And I can tell you, um, their on-farm support crew, John, Jeffrey, just all the people that work on farm have been outstanding to help us in the field. You know, we're basically field veterinarians. We do a lot of work, milk equipment, milk quality, and everyday veterinarians in general. But just having that backup, that staff, that guy you can call or that lady you can call to take a second look at everything has really, really helped our farmers. Jorge Delgado on the training side, working with your milkers in the parlor and just helping you troubleshoot, just helping open lines of communication. Just, if I were a dairyman, that's something that I would be looking at pretty seriously. So, if you guys get a chance, that'd be somebody to talk to for sure. And ironically, there is a lady outside the window of my truck. So we're sitting in a vet truck, and there's a lady like knocking on our window. So that's kind of weird. So this is definitely a different than what would be in person. So appreciate you guys being here today. And we'll get started. Where's everybody from? I can't see everybody who's on. Most people from East Tennessee on this call.
We've got a bit of a smattering. We've got some East Tennessee. We've got a couple of West Tennessee guys that just joined us. We've got a mixture of agents and farmers and some people that I don't recognize their names, but we're glad they're on.
Great. Okay, so just to start off, this is just a very simple presentation. So basically, it's kind of made to be interactive. It might be a little more difficult on a Zoom meeting, but feel free to chime in at any time. If you have questions, just, go ahead and ask them and let's talk about it. Basically this is just kind of to get you guys thinking and some information. So we're going to kind of touch on just a few things that we see that farms across the Southeast where we work. Most of our work's done in Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, and a little bit of Southern Indiana. I'll share with you today are just simple things that farmers do that impact milk quality. So it may be a little probably not going to be the typical stuff you hear about. It may some of it will old hat for you guys out there, but just things that we see that are done uncommonly well when they do a good job of it, that it has a major impact on milk quality. So our company is called Todd County Animal Clinic. We have a dairy diagnostic lab. So basically that is a support system for farmers. Guys that need milk cultures done, they want bulk tank analysis done, anything like that, we have that. And then we have our on-farm support side. So if you're a farmer and you got questions about your milking equipment or need on-farm training and support, these are all things that we can help with as well. So that's kind of what we do, is just try to keep improved cell counts in the Southeast. So just starting out, everybody learns differently. Some of us learn by reading, some have to see it, and other guys have to pee on the fence. And farmers, I feel like most of us are, we learn by trial and error. So that's kind of how we're going to talk about today, is stuff that guys have tried and that have worked. So it's going to be kind of hard with everybody on mute, but you guys, this is a new dental floss commercial. What do you guys see? Obviously, you got a cavity there, but what's missing? And in this slide, if you look right here, can you guys see my pointer, Liz?
Yep, we can see you.
So there is a ear missing. Sometimes on the farm, what you think you see and what you really see are different. So this guy's got a cavity, right? But what else has he got? She's either got a third arm or something's going on there. So
she's just really flexible.
Yeah. That's very possible. So what about here? We got another cavity, but what's really there?
Six-fingered woman.
Get some weird stuff there, right? You got a few extra fingers maybe. So it's the same thing when we're looking for products, consumers. What's the consumer really wanting in the market today? So I went to Whole Foods in Nashville and just took some pictures of the dairy shelf. This is, a huge store, and you see here you got custom label milk up top. This is a 150 cow dairy, 100 to 150 cows, the hatchers. You got Schrock on the bottom, goat milk custom right there. And you got their this Amazon brand 365, whole 365 milk at Whole Foods. And then you start getting into all this A2 and goat milk. And then the rest of the shelves are basically soy milk and flax milk and all kinds of stuff that's not really milk. So the consumers are really pushing for, basically for milk quality, and they want options. And you can see up here, this is their pickup section at Whole Foods. The only milk on the whole shelf is top shelf right there. So our consumer needs and demands are changing, and that's really why it matters. Is there's a lot of reasons it matters economically for the farm, but the number one thing that we've got to get back and figure out how to get back into the dairy market is the consumer. And their preferences are changing from, solid milk. I think, cheese consumption continues to increase, but liquid milk production continues to, seem to be on a decline nationwide as far as the consumer consumption. So, just stuff like that we've got to think about in our marketing. So from a farm perspective, economically, why does somatic cell count matter? Well, the big reason somatic cell count's important is actually production. So if you got first lactation heifers coming in with high cell counts and they have subclinical mastitis, or maybe they actually have a bad quarter, we all have blind quarters and stuff like that. When you're dealing with that, her milking potential the rest of her life is altered. And for every 100,000 increase in cell count, you're going to lose 5 pounds of milk per head per day. So actually the biggest loss for cell count overall is that production loss. So for you guys that can chime in, when do you think a cow would be at her most productive? What lactation would you think she would make the most milk?
Feel free to shout it out or throw it in the chat.
I don't see the chat. I'm having an Apple moment. We got any responses?
So we've got someone saying third lactation. What else we got? Third.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I see Sam on
3
there.
plus. Yep.
Okay. So let's look at that graph here. So this is actually the graph. So actually it's fourth lactation. So third lactation was close. But if that cow did not get mastitis, she would make more milk in the fourth and fifth lactations than she did in the third, and continue to be productive all the way out to the seventh lactation. So the longer we can, number one, prevent these cows from getting infections and just doing a better job, the more productive they become. And, it's like if we can just make those cows last, it can be very, very profitable for us. So right now we all are, as you guys have for years now, we're facing challenges, it's getting tougher, and we just got to be able to adapt and think outside the box to survive. And one of the biggest holes we see, and we were talking to some guys a few months ago, about we were just having a conversation, what is it that really drives a dairy? What is it that really makes a dairy profitable? And, how do we survive and adapt and get more economically stable over time? And the biggest things we see that really drive a dairy, number one is probably reproduction. Number two, nutrition. Number three, being milk quality. So those are the big pillars. And honestly, milk quality probably is still third down the list. but it can certainly make the difference premium wise and in hidden production losses to make the difference between being profitable and non-profitable. So just making those cows last, that's the key, and that's what we're after right now. And that can be the difference between staying in or leaving. And don't overlook the obvious. A lot of guys, walk right by the problem. They overlook the obvious. You're there every day. You work hard every day, every night. You never leave the dairy, it doesn't seem like. And, you just start overlooking stuff. I was on a dairy the other day. This was Monday. I was on a dairy and just walking through the barns and doing herd check. And I was like, man, the bedding is super low. Just right now, we can't even get bedding on that dairy. We can't even get there they're a dust bedding with a bunch of compost barns and 2 free stalls. Just more and more challenges getting dust and just stuff like that off your face. But, those cows still need to be bedded, no matter what. So just, don't overlook the obvious reasons for milk quality. So we're going to, if you guys want to chat in, tell me what you see on these 2 dairies. So this is a sand-bedded dairy on the left. This is the same dairy on the right. Tell me what you guys see. You can chat in or talk or however. We got any responses? So look at the left. Look at the free stalls. Look at the sand. This is a recycled sand. What do you guys see? So what about cow placement here? So we got some cow standing, not laying down, clean towels in the dirty container. So that's exactly right. So you look over here and we got these really nice cows going to milk cows, and they're just sitting out in a pretty dirty container. And you look down here and you got teat plugs that aren't being sanitized, stuff like that. On the dairy on the left, that sand quality, when you start seeing, blackness or color change in your sand, you're going to have some problems there. Also, look at cow position in the freestall. And so the more feet and leg, and these cows are pretty clean, but the more feet and leg manure and exposure we have in the back third of the freestall to that udder, the more likely we are to get mastitis. And we're going to get in depth on that in a minute. But, just placement of a brisket board or even tie rails or, tie ropes through the middle to keep those cows pushed back can be a good thing. Don't overlook the obvious again. What do you guys see? What we see right here. We got really dirty heifers coming in fresh. So when you got dirty heifers coming in fresh, they got more chance of getting mastitis. Where do they calve at? Are they calving in a good, clean area on good, clean bedding? And, are you flaming them? Just simple stuff like flaming these udders. You can take an alcohol bottle, just rubbing alcohol, and a little handheld torch gun and shoot that alcohol, kind of like hairspray. When you're a kid, you take a lighter and a hairspray bottle, and blow a torch. You can do that under these heifers' udders and just singe that hair. Just do simple stuff like that where you're not getting manure caked around that udder. And then right here, this cow's talking to us on the right. She doesn't want to stand on this grate. So, coming in here and putting rubber down part of that grate and then rubber in that floor, she's going to come over for you guys in a herringbone. Make it just, you still can get the manure through, but just make it easier on her feet. So what do you guys see here? This is a dairy in Virginia.
I see a dirty button.
Yeah. So what's the only way to get dirty buttons? There's only one way, really, I guess you could. I mean, I'm sure there's multiple ways, but there's one really easy way to get a dirty button. Dirty hands. Exactly. Got it. So if you're getting dirty buttons and you're getting dirty stuff like that, then you got milkers with issues. I was in a dairy Monday night, and they were paddle testing fresh cows. It's another thing we'll talk about, and they're doing everything right. And I look at the milker sleeves, and we used to call it the poop sleeve index. and the milker sleeves were filthy. It looked like he'd been preg checking, and you know, he's got sleeves and gloves covered in manure. If those cows are urinating and defecating in your parlor when they're on entry, or you know, maybe when you're backing up units or whatever, if you're having to wash the parlor a ton and there's just manure everywhere, and you know, cow entry is not good, then you know the cows are talking to you, because a cow really, you shouldn't have over maybe one or two defecations a turn at the absolute most, just roughly talking, including urinations too. And if you're getting a lot of urinations and your milkers are covered in manure, and your buttons are getting dirty and your units are covered in manure, then the cows are talking to you. You know, maybe it's a vacuum problem. Maybe it's a stray voltage problem. Maybe it's, most of the time, honestly, it's a prep problem. It's hard for the cows to enter. But all of those things factor in here. So if you're seeing a lot of that on your dairy when you go home, just go spend some time in the parlor and you're seeing all that kind of stuff, then you need to be thinking about it. These cows on the right here, this was about daylight, a little after daylight one morning on this dairy. And what do you guys see? What's all this stuff? Now, these are sick cows. These are mastitis cows. And this was literally, we called it the junkie pen. So we got all this bedding, we got manure, we're overcrowded. Look at the abdomen, look at the udders, look at the feet and legs. There's manure everywhere. What do you think their chances of getting another coliform case or having trouble are? And this is where they're putting their sick cows. Just just, you know, pay attention to your cows. If you're getting dirty cows and stuff like that, that mud and manure is coming from somewhere, and you got to find that location and end it, because that will lead to new cases of mastitis. So looking here, don't overlook the obvious. This is another dairy in Virginia, right here on the left. And basically, when I went in and did some fall-off testing to see, you know, how it all lined up, and checked the regulator could not see the vacuum. So one problem we have is we don't want a lot of elbows to our regulator, and we want the transducer or the regulator as close to the trap as possible, to the receiver jar, to sense that vacuum. So this one in particular is behind the distributor tank. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elbows before we get to the regulator. There's no way that regulator can sense vacuum on this dairy correctly. So this is a plumbing problem. So all you got to do is put the regulator back in the correct position, and you should be good to go. So just simple things like that, you know, go and check where's my transducer located. If you're a variable speed dairy, where's my sensing point, or where's my regulator? And, you know, simple things like, has it been serviced? So I walked in this dairy on the right, and they had basically had this open hole where it's letting air in where the regulator used to be. So just having maintenance done, and I asked them, you know, how long the regulator go out, and they said over a week. So these vacuums were very variable, to say the least, because you know, instead of plugging the hole, they took an old regulator cap, and this thing was sucking air like crazy. So their vacuum, T-DEN vacuum, was around 8, and it should have been around 11 or 12. So just simple things to look at. So really getting into it here. So practical practices to impact milk quality. There's 3 things we can do. Number one thing by far is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The more time and money we spend preventing mastitis, the better off we're going to be. Now, the secondary part of this is you got to detect it, and you got to detect it early. So you got to be keeping score and tracking, and I'm going to give you some practical ways to do that on your dairy. And it's something you need to be monitoring constantly. It's similar to logging into your bank account every day to make sure you got money in there. You need to be checking some certain places on your farm to make sure that you don't have a subclinical mastitis outbreak or a true mastitis, clinical mastitis outbreak. I'm going to give you some tips on you can check in on that and keep score. So 3 common things that, if they're done really well, will prevent new cases. Number 1 is fly control. Fly control is huge. It is the biggest thing. Now, number two is right before heifers calving, pre-treating heifers can have a big economic impact on your first lactations, and we'll look at some data on that. And last but certainly not least is environmental changes and working through your environment. A big deal on helping prevent new cases and also in production. If you get your environment right, it can have a major impact on production. So we're going to look at flies first. This is Dr. Nickerson. This is some work from Georgia he did, basically looking at, using a pour-on extensively or intensively using pour-ons and heifers to limit flies and what impact did it have on new infections. So in this study, he used some permethrin and just simple pour-ons for fly control. Supposed to control flies up to for 8 weeks. He was doing it every 2 weeks, which would be intensive. Just when they lock up, he's spraying them down with a pour-on. Over here's the results of the study. He reduced environmental strep infections from 20% to 3%, just regular staph species infections from 40 to 32, staph aureus. I know a lot of you guys in Tennessee, Kentucky, all of us in the South struggle with staph aureus. He reduced it tenfold reduction in staph aureus in first lactation heifers. So total infection reduction was over 60% only by controlling horn flies. Now, why do horn flies cause mastitis? What they do is they've got a needle-like projection on their teeth, and they will inject the bacteria into the udder. So that heifer may be a month old and get injected with staph aureus, or she may be a weanling heifer and get injected with staph aureus, and she's already got staph aureus colonized in her udder before we ever even think about milking her. So we spend $2,200 to raise her, or however much your replacement cost is on a heifer, and we spend all this money to get the genetics right and all that, and then fly bites on the udder end up giving her mastitis before she ever even calves in and can make us $1. So that's where pre-treatment comes in. So pre-treating heifers, we normally do it between 60 and 30 days pre-fresh. Michigan State study showed 58% of non-treated heifers were infected. So I would agree with that. I think we see anywhere between, if heifers aren't treated, most dairies with 30 to 50% of first lactation heifers have a subclinical mastitis. In other words, mastitis without flakes. So she's got a high cell count, but not necessarily showing signs. So Michigan State's showing about 60%. I would say right now, today, on the dairies we work with, is 30 to 50% of heifers that aren't treated that have subclinical, high first test days, basically. So Dr. Oliver down in Knoxville showed a 90% clearance of staph aureus when they treat the heifers before calving. Michigan State showed 61,000 cell count in heifers compared to 200,000 cell count in heifers that were treated. Tennessee showed in jerseys 1,100 pounds more milk first lactation. So if you put a number to that, it's about $174 a heifer when you treat them versus non-treating. How much does it cost to treat them? Well, with labor and everything, drugs, and we do recommend an internal teat sealant, it's around $15 a head. So does that pay? Well, if you got 40 heifers, that's going to give you about $600 there and $6,900 total when you do all that math there. If you got 100 heifers, it can be $17,000. You do 1,000 heifers, it could be $174,000. So it's about a 90% chance that you're going to make good money off of doing this. Now, if we only see a 10% increase in production and reduction in mastitis and all that, you should be at break even. So what's the process? When we pre-treat heifers, number one, like we talked about, number one thing to do is get your fly control tight on your heifers. And that's from the time they're born. In the hutches, they're susceptible to infection. So really work on them young, and then all the way through, keep that fly control going. The process for pre-treatment, 60 to 30 days pre-fresh, go ahead and inject them with usually a dry cow tube that's closer to 60 days, a lactating cow tube if you're getting tight on time. And then we recommend Orbisil or some type of internal teat sealant right behind the dry cow tube. Make sure you get that teat sealant up in the udder. You're probably not going to use a full tube. I have guys ask me all the time, can I split tubes? And the answer is that's up to you. Anything's better than nothing, but the real key is talk to your vet before you do any of this about specifics, and cleanliness is next to godliness. You don't want to do something like this and, do it on a dirty cow. You want to prep these heifers good. The most successful we've seen is doing it on a tilt table. I think that's the best bet, on a foot trimming table, tilt them up, get their feet locked down where it's safe. For smaller dairies, we have done the tail jack and do them on lockups or in a chute, and that's definitely dangerous. You got to make sure your malpractice insurance or your disability insurance is paid up before you do that if you're a vet, because it gets a little dangerous. So anyway, talk to your vet about it. But like I said, wear gloves. We don't recommend splitting tubes. Use a tilt table if you can, or get good life insurance and a helmet. And if you've got mycoplasma in your herd, and if you don't know if you have mycoplasma, you need to know. Same thing with prototheca. Get some bulk tank analysis done at a good lab, and find out if you have it. Because if you have that and you turn it loose, if you, especially mycoplasma, you could spread infection pretty easily. So, wear gloves, don't split tubes, and really prep heifers. So we prep them just like they're going to get milked. Alcohol teat ends, stay really clean. I personally would recommend even changing gloves on each heifer, but the cleaner you are, the better results you're going to have. So we're going to move on to environment. This is a pre-fresh pen in Kentucky. This is where they're calving at. So they're moving them in here to calve. What do you think our chances of getting mastitis are? Pretty good. So I'm always, when I'm evaluating a dairy, I'm looking at the knees. All right. I'm looking at the legs all the way up to the cannon bones, the hocks here, the udder, the abdomen, and the legs all through here. If I'm seeing a lot of manure on that, then I'm getting really concerned. And why does that matter? So the number one thing is do what's best for the cows. One of the best things you can do for the cows is provide a clean, safe environment, low bacterial environment, 24/7. So sand is definitely the way to go. I want to show you. I'm going to flip through a few slides, see if I can find what I'm looking for. So the reason that I'm looking at that abdomen and the reason it matters is the more manure, the more chance you're going to have of getting a new infection. So I want you to look at first lactation animals. This is a Japanese study in the 1980s. This is an old study. And they took a paint, like a removable paint, and painted the legs. So they painted them up to the hocks on a 7th lactation group and a 1st lactation group. And this paint, when a cow laid down, if it touched the udder, it would kind of show you where it touched the udder. So I want you to look at this paint map on 1st lactation animals. So the younger they are, the more manure they get. This is all the, basically simulated manure. So if you got more manure in your environment, on your abdomen, your hocks, your feet, and your legs, those feet and legs and hocks are going to be sitting right on the udder. The smaller the udder, like 1st lactation animal, the more mud or manure that you're going to get on those teats, the more chance she's going to get a new infection, and the more chance your guys in the parlor can't get those cows clean enough. So really paying attention to manure and feet and leg cleanliness, and it'll surprise you where it comes from. And I'm going to go back for a minute here, but it'll surprise you where it comes from. A lot of times it'll be an alley scraper. A lot of times it'll be crossovers, or I've had them have to walk, the environment looks great, but they've got to walk through, a foot of rainwater in an alley to get to the park twice a day or 3 times a day. So if you're seeing dirty feet and legs and you think your environment's good, it may shock you where it actually comes from. So getting back to it, we recommend sand if at all possible. Sand allows us forgiveness in a lot of different places. If you get sand and you get it right, sand's going to forgive your parlor a little bit. If you got maybe not ideal equipment, or if you got guys that are maybe not doing the best job getting cows clean and prepping, then sand can help kind of forgive you for some of those mistakes. Just because it doesn't harbor bacteria. The other thing in the South is it's cooler, and sand will actually pull heat away from a cow. The other thing it'll do is if you get deep bedded sand correct, they're going to lay longer. The more they lay, for each hour they lay, it's 2 pounds more milk per day. The other thing is it will not grow bacteria as well as any other thing we've tried. And the big thing is, of course, is you still got to get your stall size right. So we got guys in tie stalls where I'm at, and they tell me all the time on mattresses or tie stalls, I can't do sand. Well, you got to think outside the box. So this is in Europe, and they smoke a lot more than we do over here now. But they were having trouble on the outside of this business in Europe with cigarette butts. So they just made a voting contest for who the best soccer player in the world was, and you voted with your cigarette butts. So everybody got to express their opinion, and it fixed the cigarette butt problem. Same thing in the dairy. If you think you can't do it, there's probably a way. You just got to kind of figure it out. So several years ago, we had guys telling us they couldn't do sand in tie stalls. You can put a bedding saver on the back of those tie stalls. It's 3C pipe. Put an inch gap from the mattress to the, this would work in a mattress dairy too if you want to try it. But put about an inch gap where you can get fluid out, and then you can put 2 to 3 inches of sand over top of those mattresses or in a tie stall. So you got to think outside the box. If you got old stalls with low neck rails, you look at your cows' necks and they're all cut up and scarred up. And, you know, we've probably all seen it on a dairy somewhere that, you know, all their necks, the tops of their necks are rubbed off. And you think it's a neck rail problem, you're pretty sure. Then you can go in and just pick that neck rail up. There's ways to rehab these old stalls. Now, I had one guy in Wisconsin that everywhere that he went, every consultant told him something different. So he put his neck rails on a movable pipe. Depending on which consultant came in, he would move it to make them happy for a while, see which one worked, because everybody had a different opinion. So, you know, just thinking outside the box can really help you on these kind of stall remodels. So what do you guys see here? These cows are talking to us. This is in southern Alabama in July. And one thing right off the bat is look at the feet and leg cleanliness. That's the first thing I picked up on when I walked in, other than they're all stacked. So this is in South Alabama in July, no fans. So that's going to really inhibit milk production. Another thing I kind of see is these cross wooden bars here can really inhibit lunge space. You know, that cow needs to lunge forward 30% of her body to get a good lunge forward. Then we got an alley scraper that may not be working the greatest. We got manure here they're walking through. And like I said, you watch feet and leg cleanliness, and that'll tell you how clean the udders are. So there's a lot of challenges here, but go through and look at your barn before summer, and what do you see? The other things, there's no bedding. They're putting lime down on a hard mattress. So all that lime and manure is caking together to make a really cool, very sticky poop concrete on the side of the cows. So that makes for big challenges. So listen to the cow. They'll tell you what the problems are. You know, why are the cows bunching? There's only really a few reasons cows bunch. Most of the time it's flies or shading, maybe heat too. Cows aren't using stalls, no fans. So why is it happening? You know, just listen to the cows. The best prep procedure in the world. If you try to sterilize cows in your parlor, you're going to absolutely get them as clean as you can get them, surgically clean. And you go through and use surgical scrub like we would use on a dog or a cow or a horse. And you scrub and scrub and scrub. The best you can do is remove 85% of the bacteria that cow goes in the milking parlor. So if you have big environmental challenges and you've got a lot of manure in the environment, or you've got a bedding that's harboring a lot of manure and not doing a good job on stall management, the best your guys can do in the parlor at their very best is remove 85% bacteria. And cow only gets mastitis 4 ways. That's left front, left rear, right rear. And that's if she's got 4 quarters. So if you're not doing a good job of having clean bedding, your guys can't do a good job, and the parlor can't do a good enough job to prevent new infections of mastitis, even if they're flawless. Now, most of us do not have flawless dairy teams in the parlor. I've rarely seen a group of guys on all 3 shifts that I thought were top notch, all 3 shifts together. So doing yourself a favor by having a really good environment will make a huge impact on milk quality. So the most common things we see are straw, dust, and sand. So this is just a little mini study. This is a John study. This was not anything sanctioned by a university or anything. It's just where I took a couple dairies and looked at the different kinds of bedding. So we measured coliforms per gram, Klebsiella per gram, and strips per gram. So we just want to get an idea on bacteria. So this is 2 Indiana dairies, and on one Indiana dairy, they had sawdust and straw. On the second dairy, they were using recycled sand. So I went out and pulled samples out of the recycled sand pile. So it was just sitting there, had been through the stall and was about to go back in that day, and compared it to fresh straw and fresh dust. Now, this recycled sand had been in a month, come out, went through the recycling process, and was stacked again versus clean straw and clean sawdust. Now, how many coliforms per gram? So this is your E. coli's, all that kind of stuff per gram. The once recycled sand had 90,000, which is fairly high, but brand new straw had almost 1 million coliforms per gram. Brand new sawdust had 120,000 coliforms per gram. Now, I want you to remember one more time, this had been embedded in the dairy for a month, went through the wash process, and was stacked back up, and the coliform reduction was still 10 times that of brand new straw. Klebsiella per gram. Klebsiella causes a lot of those nasty watery mastitises. So once recycled sand had 13,000 Klebsiella per gram versus straw had 124,000 Klebsiella per gram. Now sawdust is pretty good on this, ironically, because sawdust is the most common place for Klebsiella, had 17,000. And a note on dust, the bigger the flake size, the bigger the particle size, the better we are. So you almost want flakes instead of dust. The smaller the particle size, the more likely you are to have mastitis. And secondarily, there is a huge difference between green sawdust and kiln dried sawdust. And I will tell you that this sawdust we sampled is kiln dried. If this were green sawdust, that number would be about 10 times higher. So looking at streps, streps cause a lot of mastitis in well-managed dairies. Once recycled sand, 62,000, 10 times higher in straw, brand new straw now, in a barn, stored in a barn, 690,000 versus sawdust, 30,000. Now, the other question for you guys is how fast do you think bacteria is going to grow on sand versus straw and dust? Now, this is what we call an inorganic. Sand is an inorganic bedding versus an organic bedding in straw and sawdust. So when you look at these things, I can assure you that bacteria is going to grow much slower in sand than sawdust. And that's proven here. This is fresh. This has been in use for a month. So to drive it home, sand really does it. So we looked at a lot of dairies. This is Andy Johnson's work in Wisconsin on this next slide in 2012. We looked at 9 mattress dairies, 11 recycled dairies, which would be your red line, 32 new sand dairies. In other words, they only do new sand, 8 biosolids or manure solids dairies. If you're in a compost barn, look at your manure solids dairies as your nearest comparison. So these are cows in the production, and we're looking from July of 11 to July of 2013, and we're looking at numbers. So if you look in the summertime, that's when the South gets the big spike, right? So you look, and your mattress dairies and your sand dairies are going to perform better than your biosolids dairies. So those compost can be a real challenge, especially if you overstock them. Right there. And then if you're on compost bedding, which some of my dairies are, that's a challenge. But you look overall and you can see that sand, which is the green line, fresh sand and recycled sand, do pretty good. And if you do a good job on mattresses, you can do it, but you are going to sacrifice some milk over deep bedded sand. Some studies we've looked at have been 5 to 7 pounds a day. So they're significance. So one thing you can do in the parlor, you know, you're in there prep, training guys and checking equipment, look at the feet and legs. It's a simple thing to do. Look at the feet and legs. Why does it matter? We've already touched on that. The more manure, the more chance of infection. Dirty feet and legs, dirty udders mean mastitis. So after you've done all you can do to prevent mastitis and you're pre-treating heifers and you're got your environment squared away, how do you detect mastitis? So that might be a good question, Liz. Let's ask everybody how they detect mastitis on their farms.
All right, guys, throw it in the chat or unmute. What do y'all do? I can see your names, and those of you who come to my meetings know I'll ask you out loud.
I won't ask you out loud.
Monthly test. What about you, Celeste?
We check it daily.
Check it daily. How?
Lab samples.
Okay. Strip it in the parlor.
And then also lumps. When they throw a lump, we figure we've got a problem.
That's right.
Anybody else? Test with the CMT.
Okay, I have a question right there because Sam brought up CMT. What is the best way to test on farm nowadays? Is it still CMT, or is there something out there that's a little bit better?
Well, I use CMT a lot. CMT is cheap. It's kind of the quick and dirty approach, and I think it works pretty good. There are some instances on CMT where it can be kind of negative or positive. Like if you're checking fresh cows, you may get a mild positive, you know, but that, you know, ain't got mastitis or doesn't have mastitis. But most of the time, CMT is still my go-to right now.
Okay.
Well executed CMT is going to be dirt cheap, and it's going to give you information immediately, and there's very little that can go wrong. And I kind of look at all that stuff, and that's what I would do right now.
Okay.
So
We've got a couple doing on-farm culture.
yeah.
What about you, Veronica? Another on-farm culture.
Yeah. I mean, we're big on on-farm culture too. That's great if you can get it done. What kind of, on you guys that are doing on-farm cultures, what kind of plates are y'all using? You Minnesota tri-plates and stuff?
Tri-plates. I'm betting tri-plates and biplates for most of y'all.
Yep. So that's good. Biplates, tri-plates. That's a good way to do it. Absolutely. So you done all you can. What's the quickest way to early detect? So the first thing I want to tell you, clinical mastitis is 10 to 15% of your total infected cows on the dairy. By and large, it's kind of like what sunk the Titanic. You know, it's the part under the water that nobody sees. Same thing on mastitis. What really kills your cell count and profitability economically is the part that nobody sees. So for us, critical control points of subclinical mastitis, that's what I'm going to concentrate on real quick here. We paddle test every quarter on a clinical cow. it's like 60 to 70% of clinical mastitis cows are going to have a quarter somewhere else that's subclinical. So if you're only concerned in getting culture on one quarter or something like that, you could be missing some stuff. We absolutely highly, highly, highly recommend monitoring all fresh animals. And you have to have a system that's easy to do it or you won't get it done because we're all just too busy. So what we recommend, when she calves in, we duct tape her legs. On a real big dairy, a couple thousand cows or something, we may do 2 days a week. On most dairies, small or at 1,000, we do 1 day a week paddle testing on fresh animals. So what we do when they calve, we duct tape their legs with whatever color. And you take your lead milker, your best milker, and what we've done in the past is take Jorge from Alltech and say, okay, Jorge, we're going to train our lead milker here. Or, sometimes the farmers or farm managers do it themselves. But we're going to say, we're going to go through and we're going to map all these fresh cows and see how many of them are coming in hot. Now, the advantage to doing fresh cow paddle test and fresh heifer paddle test is that, number one, it allows you to keep score. Is whatever I'm doing, is it working? Did we do the fly control? The environment got better and now it's working. Did we go through and pre-treat these heifers and we really got the 90% clearance, or we only got 50% clearance? What went wrong? And then, also, how did our calving environment do? Did we get new infections of calving? It just kind of gives you a rough idea of how your transition is doing. Because, in my opinion, the most critical times for new cases of mastitis are between the time you dry her off and freshen her in. And during freshening and the early transition, that's when she's going to be exposed the most. She's laying down struggling to calve. She's kicking around uncomfortable. She's big. She's on a dry cow. Let's put her on a dry cow pack. And maybe we didn't do a real good job on our dry packs this year because we can't get sawdust, or we're short on labor and we didn't do a real good job on our packs, or hey, we didn't, the vet screwed up and those cows didn't get moved to dry off fast enough because he missed a preg date, or something crazy happens if you're bull breeding. So there's a lot of things outside of our control that make this a non-perfect environment. So if you're going through and paddle testing all fresh animals, you duct tape their legs when they calve, you pick a day a week and say, today on first shift, I'm going to go in and, paddle test everybody and see if we got mastitis. For you guys that are culturing at home, this is a perfect opportunity to really find your subclinicals. What bugs are getting through? What bugs are not responding? Is it a bunch of streps, or are you getting coliforms? And that kind of gives you some data for guys like me to go through and say, okay, so here's the data. How many percentage of fresh cows are infected? How much fresh heifers are infected? If you got 50% of your fresh heifers are infected, one of the questions I'm going to say is, how's fly control? Where's the heifer razor? Are we going and talking to the heifer? Where they can't, what's their close-up look like? Just start working through where their housing and environment. And, why are they infected? Okay, what are they infected with? Is it Staph aureus, or is it, do we got more questions? I saw an orange pop up.
How many days post-calving do you recommend pulling culture or a CMT test?
So CMT testing, we recommend between 1 and 7 days. And we do it on colostrum. If you're doing it on colostrum, you're going to have a positive reaction. What you're looking for is the big gelling. You're looking for big time gelling.
Sam has a question. Do you want to unmute or do you want to write it in?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. Okay. So I CMT like my fresh cows, and then if one quarter is showing bad on that, I'll sample them. But I almost never get any growth on my on-farm culture, so I just kind of don't know what to do with it after that.
How hot are your CMTs?
I mean, it varies. Yeah. I mean, sometimes they're really bad, but I mean, if she gels, I'm going to sample it. And then I almost always have no growth. I mean, every now and then I'll catch one, but.
Okay. So that could be a couple different things. Number one, it could be a bug your media is not selecting for. Probably unlikely in your case. But, you know, like if you have prototheca or mycoplasma or something that media cannot select for, then that could be a problem. So one piece of advice I'd give you right off is to go ahead and send some of those cultures to your local lab. So you do them in-house, send them out to the lab, make sure they're doing a good job of all 13 major mastitis organisms, including myco and prototheca, and just make sure it's not something that triplate's not selecting for. So that would be my number one suggestion. Number two would be, to me, that you could be having a cow that's going through the transition. She's got a lot of white blood cells, and she's already killed the infection. That's fairly common, and that's a lot of reasons when we get negative cultures. And so I'm not surprised that you see a high number, but I think before I made a decision on it, dual pull those cultures, since half of them to the, you know, send a sample to the lab of each cow and do your on farm of each cow and do a comparison. Other things is just checking your media, make sure it's good, clean, fresh media. Make sure your incubator's set right. There's a lot of variables that can go wrong there. But most commonly, it's either the cow's killing the infection and you're being overly sensitive, which is what we want to be. The paddle tester is going to make us overly sensitive to mastitis, but that's a positive thing. If you get a lot of no growths, that's fine. But for a month, I would send them to the lab too and see, because I'm wanting you to kind of over detect. You know, I want you to be really aggressive, and so that's how I would play that. And then see what your results are. Kind of make a chart and compare them and see what you got with them versus what we're seeing. And it may be that your dry cow out there, and this is just what we call protective cells, or cow's protective cells, and the colostrum and all that could be just giving you a false positive on your paddle test, which is completely cool. That's fine. And that's, you know, maybe why you hold off on treating them until you get some cultures back, because, you know, really Cornell put out some big studies this year, and if you're waiting 24 to 48, even 72 hours to treat, your response rate's not really going to change much.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit about strip tests and what are my goals there, like after she's milked?
So, all right. So, yeah, let's talk about that right away. So, what Sam's referring to is, like, if we're checking, so we're checking strip yield, we call it. So if you're checking strip yields to see if your cows are getting over milked, what we're looking for is about 8 ounces of residual milk. So you're wanting about 2 ounces per each quarter, give or take. If you're doing it in cc's, about, I think it's 120 cc's per quarter is what we want. We want it evenly stripped, okay? So when you strip test cows, strip yield cows, one thing you're looking for is over milking, but the real thing we're looking for is even milking. I want to know that my unit alignment is right. So if my unit alignment is correct, I should be able to get equal parts of milk out of each cow. If I'm not, you know, if the front quarters are overloaded and the back quarters are over milked and they're dry and she's kicking and having a fit when we're stripping back quarters, but the front quarters are wet, or it's most of the time it's side to side in a parallel or even a herringbone, then I know my unit alignment is off and I'm unevenly in the cow. So when I'm doing strip yields, I'm making note of, number one, is she kicking, pooping, peeing, and trying to murder me when I'm getting the milk? So immediately when the unit comes off, you want to get about 120 cc's per head, okay, or per quarter, give or take. The second thing is she kicking, pooping, urinating, and having a fit? Number three is they're ringing. If you're getting rings around the tops, you know you're either over milking, you got a vacuum problem, or your prep's bad. And to be honest with you, most of the time it's your prep still. And then the other thing we're looking at is the actual yield. Can I evenly get equal parts of milk out of each quarter easily? And if not, then I'm going back and looking at the takeoff settings. And, you know, hooking a body up to that, those little body units, we can hook those up. and that kind of gives you an actual time milking. And if you got meters, sometimes they can give you a low milk flow time. And usually, depending on the company, you're adjusting low milk flow time or time and low flow. And also, depending on flow meter, it may be an ohm setting you're adjusting, or it could be a pounds per minute in flow rate you're adjusting to change that. Caveat to that is adjust it no more than a quarter pound of every 2 weeks. You got to be really careful adjusting it, because if you're milking 1,000 cows and we go in there and rip it a pound, which I did that one time when I first started. I went to this conference and, got smart. So I come home, the first area I go on is over milking, and I dropped their production about 2 pounds per head for a week. And it came back and their cell count went down. It was great. But for a week, we lost 2 pounds on a whole lot of cows. So being really slow in adjustments to let the cow on is a big, big key there. But that's something to really, really think about and go slow with when you're adjusting. And we work through that all the time. So, just call me. Also looking at TDNs when you're under there. What's my TDNs look like? Now, there's some new literature coming out saying that TDNs don't really affect cell count that much. But I can tell you that your guys can't get cows clean with bad TDNs. And if you can't get TDNs clean and squared away, that will affect cell count. Because if you got manure sitting there and you're not getting a good sealant, then that does have an impact. Now, the newer studies coming out are saying that the keratin, or that, the big plug on the end of the teat, doesn't really affect cell count. But if you're not getting teat sealed up and your guys can't get them clean because you got bad TDNs, then we need to do something to fix that problem. So does that cover it? Hello? Anybody there? Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
It's where I'm like, is anybody there? So, okay. And then one other caveat on TDNs is if you're getting a lot of bad TDNs, you want to look at liner fit. You want to look at claw vacuum. You want to look at mouthpiece chamber fit. Does it actually fit on the cow? So these are questions that, and then you look at over milking too, and wear on the liner. You really got to look at wear on the liner. Are you actually changing liners when they're supposed to be changed and all that? So just stuff like that is stuff to think about if you're getting bad TDNs as well. And they're pretty easy to fix. It's not a big deal to fix those. So, and of course, over milking factors into bad TDNs as well. So yep, that's what I got on that. Oh.
And things like troubleshooting on-farm culture, running a Vadia, looking at TDNs, any of that stuff, feel free to call John, feel free to call me, and we'll be there with bells on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, after the coronavirus.
Yes, after that, when we're actually allowed to travel again.
I'll probably come now because I figure I've already had it, but who knows? I may have it now. You never know.
You are coughing an awful lot.
Yeah, it's not been fun, but I put myself on antibiotics. I'm sure it's safe. So, but so the other thing is how many of us actually keep score on the dairy? Like, how do are we tracking new infections over time? Are we looking at how many chronic cows we got? Are we looking at first lactation, fresh animals that are calving in high? So for me, this is a really important thing. Most dairies, I'm trying to look at this every month if I can. Is a 427. So if you're on DHIA test, of course, if you're on dairy comp, it's different. So you guys on dairy comp out there, there's other ways to do this kind of stuff. So we can talk about that. But if you're on a PC DART, you just request a 427, and it gives you the actual infection rate cell count in your herd. And it benchmarks you against the top 20% of the herds in the United States. So how many cows are infected in this herd? 23, 25%. What's top in the U.S.? 10%. First lactation, second lactation, third lactation. So your goal is to be on the purple line. Less than 5% new infection rate per month is your goal on new infections. You're at 10%. Now, if you've been running at 5% for a year and all of a sudden you jump to 10%, that's an early warning flag that something changed. I hired 2 new guys in the parlor. I had my night guys quit. I hired 2 new guys. Now my cell count, new infection is 10%. You know, I just changed milking equipment. My new infection rate is 10%. You know, I had a really hard time getting sawdust this month. Jump. So it's stuff to think about. And then coming over here, your chronic cow numbers, you say, hey, maybe I need to cull some of those cows out or kill quarters. These are cows that have been infected 3 times or more. You know, if you're getting a high number of infected 3 times or more and you haven't taken action on them, or if the action's not working that you are taking on them, you know, that's something to think about too. So that's a detection system. And then first lactation fresh animals. Like I said, most dairies are between 30 and 50% if they're not pre-treating and doing a good job of fly control. So this allows you to keep score. Next page of this 427 shows you the infection rate per lactation and staging lactation. So it breaks it down into actual days down here on this bottom. And then this is my favorite. I always want to know where I was last year. So if I've been working with your farm for a while and we look back at October and I say, hey, October last year we were 9%, now we're at 8%. I ain't sure the vet made a big difference, you know. Or I say, you know, you were at 20%, now we're at 5%. You know, we're doing something right. And it allows you to trend, like first lactation fresh animals here. You know, the percent jumping in November, we're down in December, we're back up in April, we're down in May. Maybe we didn't calve many here or something, I don't know. But then I've got 60% infected in July. You know, what happened in July? Where are my fresh animals? What changed that could have affected it? This is still part of that report. So it's benchmarking, again, herd versus the top 20% of herds. And it gives you the ability to make management decisions and keep score. So looking at cure rates, when I treated my cows last month, between last test and this test, did I fix them? When I did my dry off to fresh cows, did we fix them? And then again, these lines are the top 20% of herds on test in the U.S. So in summary, biggest thing is control flies. We think pre-treating heifers still pays right now. It can pay pretty good. Environment is everything. And I'll leave you with this, do what's best for the cows. If sand is the best thing for the cows, then if you do what's best for the cows, then the cows will take care of you. You know, most mastitis problems are multifactorial. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of reasons that this mastitis problem has occurred. And it's our job to find those reasons and to improve them so that the cows can live a better life. The better we treat the cows, the better job we do managing the cows, the better job they're going to do for us making money. So these are just some common things if you do really well and really help you in increasing profitability on cell count. So with that, I'm done. I'm open to any questions. Here's my contact information if I can help in any way.